Unity Prime stretched across space like a silver wheel, its massive spokes reaching toward the stars. The station had served as the heart of galactic civilization for 300 years. Inside its gleaming corridors, representatives from hundreds of worlds walked together in what most believed was lasting peace. Captain Robert Hayes stood at the observation deck, watching ships arrive from distant systems. Sleek vessels from the water worlds of Aquaria docked beside the angular craft of the Silicon Brotherhood. Trade ships from dozens of species brought goods and ideas from across the galaxy. It was exactly what the founders of the Galactic Council had dreamed of when they built this place. Still impressed by the view? Dr. Lisa Morgan joined him at the window. The xenobiologist carried a stack of data tablets, her usual collection of research on the various species they worked with daily. "Every time," Robert replied. "My grandfather used to tell stories about when Earth was alone in the dark. Hard to believe that was only 50 years ago." Lisa nodded. When humanity had first received the invitation to join the Galactic Council, most people on Earth thought it was a joke or an invasion. The idea that hundreds of intelligent species had been trading and talking for centuries while humanity struggled with basic spaceflight seemed impossible. Yet here they were, accepted members of the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. "Ambassador Wells wants to see us before the session starts," Lisa said. "Something about the Velkin situation." Robert's expression darkened. The Velkins had been causing problems for months. Their prime regent, a massive reptilian named Thurak, seemed to believe that humans were a threat to galactic peace. The irony wasn't lost on Robert. Humanity had spent the last 50 years proving they belonged in civilized society. They made their way through the diplomatic quarter, passing beings of every imaginable shape and size. The council had strict rules about interaction between species. No violence, no threats, no attempts to dominate other races. It was a system that had worked for 3 centuries, bringing prosperity and knowledge to billions of worlds. Commander Jake Thompson met them at Ambassador Wells's office. The security chief looked tired. "Any word from the Outer Rim?" Robert asked. "Nothing good," Jake replied. 3 more Velkin fleets moved into unclaimed space this week. They're not exactly hiding their military buildup. Ambassador Patricia. Wells emerged from her office, her face showing the strain of recent diplomatic battles. At 65, she had spent most of her adult life building relationships between Earth and the galactic community. The current crisis with the Velkins was testing everything she had worked to achieve. "The situation is getting worse," Patricia said without preamble. "Thurak has been meeting with representatives from the Korthak hegemony and the Stellar Dominion. He's trying to build a coalition against us." "On what grounds?" Lisa asked. "We've followed every council regulation. Our trade agreements are fair, our colonies are properly registered, and we've never initiated military action against anyone." Patricia's smile was bitter. "According to Thurak, that's exactly the problem. He claims we're too good to be true. He thinks we're hiding our real nature until we're strong enough to threaten the established order." Robert shook his head. The accusation made no sense. Humanity had gone out of its way to be model galactic citizens. Their trade missions brought Earth products to dozens of worlds. Their scientific exchanges had advanced research in fields from medicine to engineering. Human diplomats had helped resolve 3 territorial disputes without a single shot being fired. "He's been studying our history," Jake added. "Earth's history, I mean. The wars, the conflicts, the violence. He's convinced that peaceful behavior is just an act we're putting on." "Every species has a violent past," Lisa protested. "The Aquarians had underwater wars for centuries. The Silicon Brotherhood literally enslaved organic life forms for 1,000 years. The Council was founded on the principle that species can grow beyond their origins. Try telling that to a 7-foot reptile who thinks diplomacy is weakness," Patricia replied. They entered the main council chamber, a vast circular room with seating for representatives from 200 species. The human delegation took their assigned seats in the middle tier, neither at the prestigious center positions reserved for founding members nor relegated to the outer edge where newer species usually sat. It was a hard-won position that reflected humanity's growing influence. The chamber filled quickly. Beings of every description took their places as the day's session prepared to begin. The Aquarians flowed into their water-filled pods. The Silicon Brotherhood connected to their data networks. The gas giant dwellers sealed themselves into their pressure suits. Despite their vast differences, they had learned to work together. Thurak entered with the Velkin delegation, his heavy footsteps echoing in the chamber. The Prime Regent stood nearly 8 feet tall, his scaled hide marked with ritual scars that denoted his military rank. Behind him came a dozen smaller Velkins, all bearing the insignia of their warrior caste. The Velkin leader's eyes found the human delegation immediately. Robert had seen that look before, during his years as a military officer on Earth. It was the look of someone deciding whether you were prey or predator. Chancellor Vorin of the Centauri Federation called the session to order. The elderly humanoid had been moderating council sessions for over 50 years. His species had helped write the original charter that governed galactic civilization. Today's agenda includes trade regulation updates, the mining rights dispute in Sector 7, and Ambassador Wells's proposal for expanded cultural exchange programs, Vorin announced. Patricia stood when recognized, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. She spoke about humanity's desire to share Earth's art and music with other worlds. She outlined plans for student exchanges and joint research projects. She talked about the benefits of deeper cooperation between species. It was exactly the kind of speech that had made humanity respected throughout the galaxy. Reasonable, beneficial, focused on mutual gain rather than dominance. Several delegates nodded in approval. Thurak rose before Patricia had finished speaking. Chancellor, I request permission to address a matter of vital importance to galactic security. The breach of protocol sent murmurs through the chamber. Speakers were not supposed to be interrupted during formal presentations. Patricia paused, clearly unsure how to respond. Prime Regent Thurak, you will have your opportunity when Ambassador Wells concludes her remarks, Chancellor Vorin replied firmly. What I have to say cannot wait, Thurak declared. His voice carried a tone that Robert recognized from his military days. It was the voice of someone who had already made a decision and was simply informing others of the consequences. The delegates need to understand the truth about humanity before we continue these discussions, Thurak continued. They need to see what humans really are when their masks come off. Patricia remained standing, her diplomatic training keeping her calm despite the obvious challenge. Prime Regent, if you have concerns about Earth's actions, I invite you to present them through proper channels. We have nothing to hide from our fellow council members. Thurak's expression might have been a smile on a human face. On his reptilian features, it looked like a predator showing its teeth. Nothing to hide? We shall see about that, Ambassador Wells. We shall see indeed. The chamber fell silent as Thurak activated a communication device. Whatever he was planning, Robert realized it was already in motion. The Velkin delegation had come prepared for something more than routine diplomatic debate. What I'm about to show the galaxy will prove that humanity's peaceful facade is nothing more than a carefully constructed lie, Thurak announced to the chamber. It will demonstrate the savage nature that lurks beneath their diplomatic smiles. Robert felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. Whatever Thurak had planned, it was designed to destroy everything humanity had built in 50 years of galactic citizenship. The look in the Velkin leader's eyes suggested that some lines were about to be crossed that could never be uncrossed. The session that had started as routine diplomacy was about to become something entirely different. Robert just hoped they would all survive whatever Thurak was planning to unleash. The communication device in Thurak's hands began to glow with a pulsing red light. Robert Hayes recognized the design immediately. It was a galaxy-wide emergency broadcaster, the kind used only for natural disasters or alien invasions. The device was supposed to be activated only with council approval, and only in cases of absolute necessity. Prime Regent, you do not have authorization to use that equipment, Chancellor Vorin declared, his voice sharp with alarm. The elderly Centauri leader started to rise from his position, but Thurak's guards moved to block any interference. Authorization? Thurak's laugh was harsh and grating. The galaxy needs to see the truth. Today, I provide that service. Ambassador. Wells stepped forward. Whatever you think you're accomplishing, this is not the way. The Council has procedures for addressing grievances between species. Let us work together to resolve any concerns you have about humanity. Work together? Thurak's eyes narrowed. With creatures who hide their savage nature behind diplomatic smiles. I think not, Ambassador. Today the galaxy learns what humans really are. The device activated with a sharp electronic whine that echoed through the chamber. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds and thousands of space stations, emergency broadcasts began interrupting regular communications, being stopped their daily activities as the universal emergency signal demanded their attention. Robert felt his stomach drop as he realized the scope of what was happening. Every inhabited world, every trade ship, every scientific station would be receiving this signal. Billions of intelligent beings across the galaxy were about to witness whatever Thurak had planned. Citizens of the galaxy, Thurak began, his voice now broadcasting to every corner of civilized space. I am Prime Regent, Thurak of the Velkan Empire. What you are about to see will reveal the true nature of the species known as humans. For 50 years they have walked among us pretending to be peaceful, claiming to value life and diplomacy. Today I will prove that this is all an elaborate deception. The chamber screens activated, showing the interior of a Velkan warship. The vessel's design was clearly military, with weapon ports visible through the viewports. In the center of the frame stood a human man in a simple blue uniform, his hands bound behind his back. Lisa gasped beside Robert. That's a colony ship captain's uniform. The bound man was probably in his 40s with graying hair and kind eyes. Despite his restraints, he stood straight and calm. Behind him, Robert could see more humans, including women and children. They were all dressed in civilian clothes, clearly not military personnel. 3 days ago, my forces intercepted a human vessel called the New Horizon. Thurak continued his broadcast. This ship carried 2,000 human colonists, including families, with children. They were traveling to establish a new settlement in unclaimed space, or so they claimed. On screen, a Velkan officer pushed the bound man forward. The human stumbled but regained his footing quickly. When he looked up at the camera, his expression showed no fear, only a quiet determination that reminded Robert of veteran soldiers he had known. This is Captain Michael Davis of the New Horizon, Thurak announced. When my forces boarded his vessel, he resisted us. He claimed he was protecting innocent civilians. But we know better, don't we, Captain Davis? We know that humans are incapable of true peaceful behavior. In the council chamber, delegates from dozens of species watched in growing horror. Some began to stand and voice protests. But Thurak's guards had positioned themselves throughout the room. The Velkan military presence made it clear that any interference would be met with force. Captain Davis spoke for the first time, his voice clear and steady despite his situation. My name is Michael Davis. I am captain of the colony vessel New Horizon. 3 days ago, Velkan warships attacked my ship without provocation. My passengers are civilians seeking to build a new home on an unclaimed world. They have done nothing wrong. Nothing wrong? Thurak moved closer to the camera. You resisted lawful inspection of your vessel. You endangered the lives of your passengers through your stubborn refusal to cooperate. And now, you will show the galaxy what humans truly become when faced with consequences for their actions. The camera angle shifted to show more of the ship's interior. Robert could see dozens of humans in the background, all civilians by their appearance. Women held children close. Elderly passengers sat quietly with dignity despite their obvious fear. These were not soldiers or warriors. They were families seeking a new life among the stars. Captain Davis, Thurak continued, I offer you a choice. Renounce your resistance. Admit that human claims of peaceful intention are lies. Tell the galaxy that your species will resort to violence whenever it suits your purposes. Do this, and your passengers will be returned safely to human space. Davis looked directly into the camera. When he spoke, his words were not directed at Thurak but at someone beyond the lens. Jennifer, Emma, I want you to listen to me. What's about to happen isn't your fault or anyone else's fault except the people who chose to do this. I need you to remember what we taught you about right and wrong. Some things are worth standing up for no matter what it costs. In the background, a woman's voice called out, "Michael, we love you. We're proud of you." A child's voice, high and frightened, added, "Daddy, come home safe." Davis closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them and looked at Thurak. "I won't lie to save myself. My passengers are innocent people seeking a better life. I was protecting them because that's what decent beings do. If you want to hurt them to make some twisted point, that choice is yours. But I won't help you do it." "Foolish," Thurak snarled. "You could save them all with a few simple words. Instead, you choose pride over their safety. This is exactly what I expected from a human." "No," Davis replied calmly. "This is what you should expect from any decent person, human or otherwise. The galaxy is watching you, Thurak. They're seeing who you really are, just as much as they're seeing who I am." The Velkan leader's anger was visible even through the broadcast. This was clearly not the response he had expected. He had planned to show the galaxy a human begging for mercy, abandoning principles to save lives. Instead, Captain Davis remained calm and dignified. "The galaxy will see human weakness," Thurak declared. "They will see that your species' claims of civilization are nothing but pretense." "Maybe," Davis agreed. "Or maybe they'll see that some people, human or otherwise, believe that principles matter more than personal safety. Maybe they'll see that real strength isn't about having the biggest weapons or the most ships. Maybe they'll see that real strength is doing what's right even when it costs everything." Thurak drew a weapon, a sleek energy pistol that gleamed under the ship's lights. The Velkan military carried such weapons as symbols of their authority. It was designed to kill quickly and efficiently. "Last chance, Captain Davis. Show the galaxy what humans really are. Beg for your life. Renounce your foolish principles. Save your passengers." Davis looked into the camera one final time. "My name is Michael Davis. I am a citizen of Earth and a member of the human species. We believe that protecting innocent people is worth any sacrifice. We believe that some principles cannot be compromised no matter the cost. And we believe that what you're about to do will be remembered by every decent being in this galaxy." He paused, then added quietly, "Tell my wife and daughter that I love them. Tell them that everything we taught them about right and wrong is true. And tell them that sometimes standing up for what's right is the most important thing a person can do." The weapon in Thurak's hand powered up with a high whine. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched as the Velkan leader aimed at the defenseless human. "This is what happens to species that refuse to acknowledge superior strength," Thurak announced. The energy bolt struck Captain Davis in the chest. He fell immediately, his body still. On the screen, his wife's scream echoed through the ship's corridors. His daughter's cry of anguish cut through the broadcast like a blade. Thurak looked at the camera with satisfaction. "Let this be a lesson to any who would challenge Velkan authority. Weakness disguised as principle will always be punished." The broadcast ended abruptly, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. In the council chamber, the silence stretched for long moments. Then slowly beings began to react. Some species representatives stood in outrage. Others remained seated, clearly unsure how to respond. A few nodded in what might have been approval. Ambassador Wells sat frozen in her chair, her face pale with shock. Around her, the human delegation stared at the now dark screens in disbelief. Thurak turned to address the chamber directly. "Now you have seen the truth. Humans will choose martyrdom over practical compromise. They will sacrifice innocent lives for abstract principles. This is not the behavior of a civilized species. This is the behavior of dangerous fanatics who threaten galactic peace." Robert Hayes stood slowly, his hands clenched at his sides. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet, but it carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "You just made a mistake, Thurak. The biggest mistake your species has ever made." The Velkan leader's expression showed amusement. "Is that a threat, Captain Hayes? Will you prove my point by resorting to violence here in the sacred halls of the Council?" The Velkin leader's expression showed amusement. Is that a threat, Captain Hayes? Will you prove my point by resorting to violence here in the sacred halls of the Council? Robert's smile was cold and completely without humor. No threats, Prime. Regent. Just a simple statement of fact. You wanted to show the galaxy what humans are really like. Congratulations. You're about to find out. A public killing unleashed humanity's full wrath. The council chamber remained frozen in the aftermath of the broadcast. Representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence, processing what they had just witnessed. Some stared at the empty screens in disbelief. Others looked at the human delegation with expressions ranging from sympathy to suspicion. Chancellor Vorin was the first to break the silence. His aged voice trembled with either fury or fear. Prime Regent Thurak, you have violated the most sacred laws of the Galactic Council. The murder of a bound prisoner broadcast across civilized space is an act of unprecedented barbarism. Thurak remained standing, his reptilian features showing no remorse. I have demonstrated the truth about human nature. Captain Davis chose death over compromise. His stubbornness cost him his life and endangered his passengers. This is exactly the kind of irrational behavior that makes humans unsuitable for galactic society. He was murdered in cold blood, Ambassador Wells said, her diplomatic training keeping her voice steady despite the rage burning in her eyes. An unarmed civilian was executed for the crime of protecting innocent people. He was given a choice. Thurak replied coldly. He chose poorly, just as his species always chooses poorly when faced with superior strength. Around the chamber, delegates began to react more vocally. The aquatic hydrians bubbled angrily in their water tanks. The insectoid hive queens clicked their mandibles in agitation. Even the normally emotionless Silicon Brotherhood showed flashing lights that indicated their version of distress. This must be brought before the full council for judgment, declared Representative Zolak of the Crystalline Confederacy. Such actions cannot go unpunished. I agree, added Ambassador Serenity of the Peaceful Worlds Alliance. This violence threatens the very foundation of galactic civilization, but not all. Voices were supportive. Senator Grimax of the Warrior Clan spoke up from his position in the upper tier. The Velkin showed strength, the human showed weakness. Perhaps it is time to reconsider which species truly deserve seats in this chamber. A murmur of agreement came from several other militant species. The chamber was beginning to fracture along predictable lines. The peaceful species condemned Thurak's actions while the more aggressive ones saw them as a demonstration of necessary strength. Ambassador Wells rose to address the chamber. The Galactic Council was founded on principles of cooperation and mutual respect. What we witnessed today was a violation of everything this body represents. Earth demands immediate sanctions against the Velkin Empire and the return of all prisoners taken from the New Horizon. Earth demands? Thurak laughed harshly. What authority does Earth have to demand anything? Your species has just proven its weakness before the entire galaxy. You have no power here. Robert Hayes stood beside his ambassador. When he spoke, his voice carried a military authority that cut through the chamber's noise. Ambassador Wells speaks for Earth's government, but I want to make something clear to everyone present. What you saw on that broadcast wasn't weakness. It was restraint. Restraint? Thurak's voice dripped with contempt. Your Captain Davis is dead. His passengers remain my prisoners. Where is the strength in that? You'll find out, Robert replied simply. The quiet certainty in his voice made several delegates lean forward. There was something in the human captain's tone that suggested knowledge they didn't possess. Dr. Lisa Morgan activated her personal communicator, checking for messages from her research network. What she saw made her face go pale. Robert, she whispered urgently. We need to talk. Now. Commander Jake Thompson was already moving toward the exit. Excuse us, he said to the chamber. We need to consult with our government. The human delegation filed out of the chamber, leaving behind a room full of confused and worried aliens. As they walked through the corridors of Unity Prime, Lisa shared what she had learned. Every human research station has gone dark, she reported quietly. My contacts on 17 different worlds have stopped responding to messages, not just delayed responses. Complete communication blackout. Trade ships too, Jake added, checking his security reports. Every human merchant vessel in the Outer Rim has disappeared from tracking systems. They're not destroyed. They're just gone. Patricia Wells felt a chill despite the station's controlled temperature. How many people are we talking about? Across the galaxy? Maybe 2 million humans on various worlds, stations, and ships, Robert calculated. All of them have gone silent in the last 2 hours. They reached the human diplomatic quarter, a small section of Unity Prime reserved for Earth's representatives. The area was normally busy with staff members, visiting trade delegators, and cultural exchange students. Now it was eerily quiet. Where is everyone? Patricia asked. Jake checked his security console. According to the logs, all non-essential personnel were evacuated 6 hours ago, before the council session, before the broadcast. 6 hours ago? Robert stared at his security chief. That's impossible. We didn't know what Thurak was planning. Maybe. We didn't, Jake replied grimly. But somebody did. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the effects of the broadcast were spreading far beyond Unity Prime. On Earth, President James Harrison sat in the secure conference room beneath the Capitol building. Around the table sat the most powerful people. In human government and military leadership, General Thomas Clark, head of Earth Defense Forces, spoke first. Every military unit is reporting ready status. Fleet positions have been confirmed. All assets are in place. Civilian evacuation is complete, reported Admiral Susan Reynolds. Every human settlement in potentially hostile space has been cleared. Our people are safe. Communications blackout is holding, added Director Sarah Coleman from Earth Intelligence. No human vessel or station is transmitting on any monitored frequency. As far as the galaxy knows, we've all disappeared. President Harrison nodded grimly. Then Operation Righteous Fury is authorized. General Clark, Admiral Reynolds, you have complete operational authority. All previous restrictions on military engagement are lifted. What about the Council? Asked Secretary of State William Foster. We still have diplomatic options. The time for diplomacy ended when they murdered Captain Davis, Harrison replied. They wanted to see what humans are really like. They're about to get their wish. Back on Unity Prime, the Council session had devolved into chaos. Species aligned, themselves along old rivalries and alliances. Some called for immediate sanctions against the Velkans. Others argued that Thurak had simply demonstrated necessary strength. Chancellor Vorin struggled to maintain order as voices rose throughout the chamber. The careful balance of galactic politics was crumbling in the face of the crisis. The humans have not responded to our requests for comment, announced the chamber's communication officer. All attempts to contact Earth government have been unsuccessful. Perhaps they are too ashamed to respond, Thurak suggested. Perhaps they finally understand their place in the galactic hierarchy. But others were beginning to worry. Representative Kayla of the Merchant Guild had dealt with humans for decades. This silence is not like them, she warned. Humans always respond to diplomatic contact, always. This complete blackout suggests something else entirely. What are you suggesting? Asked Chancellor Vorin. I'm suggesting that maybe we don't understand humans as well as we thought we did, Kayla replied. In 50 years of trade relations, I've never seen them simply disappear like this. It's like they've all vanished from the galaxy. Thurak dismissed the concern with a wave of his clawed hand. They are hiding in shame. When they realize that resistance is futile, they will emerge and accept whatever terms I choose to offer. But deep in the station's intelligence center, other patterns were being noticed. The Centauri monitoring systems were picking up strange readings from across the galaxy. Ships that had been identified as human merchants were no longer where they were supposed to be. Communication relays that served human colonies were either silent or broadcasting only automated signals. Most disturbing of all, several species reported that their own military scouts had lost contact with forward observation posts. Not destroyed, not captured, simply gone quiet, as if they had never existed. The intelligence reports were classified at the highest levels, seen only by the Council's security leadership. But the pattern was clear to anyone who knew how to read it. The humans hadn't disappeared. They had gone dark for a reason. And in the Outer Rim territories where Velkan ships patrolled what they considered their domain, sensor operators began reporting anomalies. Shadows on their screens that shouldn't be there. Energy readings that appeared and vanished too quickly to track. Something was moving in the darkness between the stars. Something that had been hiding among them all along. The galaxy had demanded to see what humans really were. Soon they would understand that the peaceful traders and diplomats they had known were only one face of humanity. The other face was about to reveal itself. Prime Regent Thurak, celebrating his victory in his private quarters aboard the Velkan flagship, had no idea that his demonstration of strength had just awakened something that had been sleeping in the depths of human space. Captain Michael Davis was dead. But his death had lit a fire that would burn across the galaxy until every last person responsible faced the consequences of their actions. The silence before the storm was ending, and the storm that was coming would reshape the balance of power among the stars forever. A public killing unleashed humanity's full wrath. 72 hours had passed since Captain Davis died on galactic broadcast. The silence from human space had grown so complete that some species began to wonder if humanity had simply abandoned their colonies and fled to Earth. Trade routes that had buzzed with human merchant ships for decades now showed empty space, on long-range sensors. Prime Regent Thurak stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying reports from across Velkan territory. His military commanders assured him that human activity had ceased entirely. Not a single human vessel had been detected in the Outer Rim for 3 days. "They have learned their lesson," declared General Vorthak, Thurak's chief military advisor. "The execution of their captain showed them the price of resistance. Now they cower in their home system, afraid to venture into civilized space." "Perhaps," Thurak replied, but something nagged at him. In his experience, defeated enemies either surrendered openly or prepared for revenge in secret. This complete disappearance felt different. It felt planned. On Unity Prime, the Galactic Council continued its debates. Some species demanded sanctions against the Velkans. Others argued that Thurak had simply demonstrated necessary strength. The human delegation remained present, but spoke little, offering only brief statements about their government's ongoing evaluation of the situation. Ambassador Wells sat in her quarters, reviewing encrypted messages from Earth. What she read made her understand why her government had ordered such complete diplomatic restraint. The plans being put into motion were beyond anything the Council could imagine. President Harrison's final message was simple. The galaxy wanted to see what we really are. Soon they will understand that everything they thought they knew about humanity was carefully designed to let them sleep peacefully at night. Far from the political discussions and military posturing, the real action was beginning in the empty spaces between stars. Ships that had been invisible to galactic sensors for 50 years finally began to move. These were not the merchant vessels and colony ships that other species knew. These were the products of human engineering and human paranoia, built in secret, shipyards hidden in asteroid fields and gas giant atmospheres. Admiral Reynolds coordinated the operation from a command vessel that officially didn't exist. Around her, holographic displays showed the positions of hundreds of ships that had been hiding in the darkness since humanity first joined the galactic community. "All fleets report ready status," announced Captain Martinez, her tactical officer. "Phase 1 can begin on your command." "Remember," Reynolds addressed her fleet commanders, "we are not conquerors. We are not invaders. We are teachers. The galaxy is about to learn the difference between human restraint and human capability." The lesson began simultaneously across 12 star systems. Velkan Outpost 7 had guarded the approaches to their territory for over a century. Its massive defense platforms and patrol fleets had never faced a serious challenge. Commander Skirak was reviewing routine reports when his sensors officer suddenly spoke up. "Sir, I'm detecting energy signatures on the system perimeter." "Identification?" Skirak asked without much interest. "Probably another merchant convoy requesting passage through Velkan space." Unknown, sir. The contacts appeared suddenly. No approach vector detected. Skarak looked up from his reports. Show me. The main screen lit up with sensor data. We're empty. Space had been moments before. Dozens of contacts now appeared. The ships were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Sleek, angular, and clearly built for war. Communications incoming, reported the sensor officer. This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force, a human voice announced. Velkin Outpost 7, you are ordered to surrender immediately. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Skarak laughed. A handful of human ships think they can threaten a fully armed Velkin base? Open fire. Destroy them all. The defense platforms turned their massive guns toward the human fleet. Energy beams that could crack the hull of a battleship lanced through space toward their targets. The beams struck empty space. The human ships had moved with impossible speed, their positions shifting faster than Velkin targeting computers could track. Return fire, Admiral Chen ordered calmly. What followed was not a battle but a demonstration. Human weapons built with technology the galactic community had never seen tore through Velkin defenses like paper. Defense platforms that had stood for decades crumbled under precisely targeted strikes. Patrol ships found their weapons useless against human shields while their own defenses failed against human firepower. Within 30 minutes, Velkin Outpost 7 was a collection of drifting wreckage. Not a single human ship had been damaged. Similar scenes played out across Velkin territory. Military installations that had seemed invincible fell to human forces that appeared from nowhere and struck with overwhelming precision. Patrol fleets, sent to investigate, found themselves outgunned and outnumbered by ships that seemed to materialize from empty space. The Velkin High Command watched in growing horror as reports flooded in from across their empire. Base after base went silent. Fleet after fleet failed to report back. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were systematically dismantling Velkin military power with surgical precision. How is this possible? General Vorthak demanded. Our intelligence reports showed no significant human military presence. Their ships were merchants and colony vessels. Thurek stared at the tactical display showing the destruction of his empire's defenses. Red markers indicated bases under attack or already destroyed. The pattern was too coordinated, too precise to be coincidence. They were hiding, he realized. For 50 years, they've been hiding their true capabilities. Should we attempt to negotiate? Suggested Admiral Koreth, his naval commander. Negotiate? Thurak's voice carried equal parts rage and fear. They are destroying everything we built. There will be no negotiation until they are crushed. But even as he spoke, Thurek understood that his empire was facing something beyond their ability to resist. The humans had revealed military technology that made Velkin weapons seem primitive. By comparison, worse, they had demonstrated tactical coordination that suggested decades of preparation. On Earth, President Harrison received reports of the initial strikes. Every target had been neutralized with minimal casualties to Velkin personnel. Human forces had focused on military installations while avoiding civilian populations entirely. Phase 2 is authorized, Harrison announced to his military commanders. Begin liberation of Velkin prisoner ships. General Clark activated the next stage of the operation. Special forces units that had been positioned throughout Velkin space began their missions. These were not the diplomats and traitors that the galaxy knew. These were soldiers trained for exactly this kind of precise, overwhelming intervention. The rescue of the New Horizon survivors took place while Thurak's flagship was still receiving reports of base destructions across his territory. Human special forces infiltrated the Velkin vessel using stealth technology that made them invisible to sensors. Commander Thompson led the rescue personally. His team moved through the enemy ship like ghosts, neutralizing guards with non-lethal weapons and freeing prisoners without alerting the main crew. Jennifer Davis and her daughter Emma were among the first to be evacuated. "Where's Michael?" Jennifer asked as human soldiers escorted her to safety. Thompson's expression was gentle but firm. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your husband died a hero, but we're here to make sure his sacrifice means something." By the time Velkan security realized what was happening, the human prisoners were already aboard rescue ships and jumping to hyperspace. Not a single prisoner remained in Velkan custody. Thurak received the report while still trying to understand the scope of the military disaster unfolding across his territory. The humans had not only attacked his bases, but had successfully rescued their people from the heart of his fleet. "How many ships do they have?" he demanded. "We don't know, sir," Admiral Korath replied. "Our estimates were clearly wrong. They appear to have a fleet at least 10 times larger than our intelligence indicated. And their technology? Superior to ours in every category we've encountered. Their ships are faster, their weapons more powerful, their defenses stronger. It's as if they've been developing military technology for decades while pretending to be peaceful merchants." Thurak finally understood the trap he had walked into. The humans had not been weak. They had been patient. For 50 years they had built relationships, gathered intelligence, and prepared for exactly this kind of conflict, while maintaining the appearance of peaceful traders. Captain Davis's execution had not been the demonstration of human weakness that Thurak intended. It had been the trigger for a military response that revealed humanity's true nature to the galaxy. The species that had seemed so eager to cooperate and compromise had simply been choosing not to fight. Now that choice had been taken away from them, and the galaxy was about to learn that when humans finally decided to go to war, they did so with a thoroughness and precision that made other species' military efforts look like children playing with toys. The silence from human space was ending. The storm had begun, and Prime Regent Thurak was beginning to realize that his demonstration of strength had awakened something that would not stop until every person responsible for Captain Davis's murder faced the consequences of their actions. A public killing unleashed humanity's full wrath. The Velkan homeworld had never been attacked in its recorded history. Zethros Prime sat at the heart of an empire that had conquered dozens of star systems through superior military might. Its orbital defense network was considered one of the strongest in the galaxy. Massive battle stations ringed the planet, their weapons capable of destroying entire fleets. General Marcus Stone studied the tactical display from his flagship's bridge. The human fleet had assembled at the edge of the Zethros system, just beyond the range of Velkan sensors. Around him, the largest military force humanity had ever assembled, prepared for the final phase of their response to Captain Davis's murder. "All fleet elements report ready," announced his tactical officer. 240 ships in position. Ground forces standing by for planetary assault. "Remember the mission parameters," Stone addressed his commanders over the fleet communication system. "We are here to end the Velkan Empire as a military threat. Civilian casualties are to be avoided at all costs. We are not monsters. We are teachers." The attack began with electronic warfare. Human ships, invisible to Velkan sensors, launched a coordinated cyber assault against every defense platform, communication relay, and command center in the system. Velkan computers, built with technology decades behind human capabilities, proved helpless against the digital invasion. Defense platforms that had protected Zethros Prime for centuries suddenly went offline. Communication networks collapsed. Targeting systems failed. In the space of minutes, the most heavily defended world in Velkan space became blind and defenseless. Supreme Commander Draxus, military leader of the Velkan homeworld, watched in disbelief as his command center's screens went dark one by one. Emergency power kicked in, but the backup systems had been compromised as well. "What's happening?" he demanded of his technical staff. "Complete system failure, sir," reported his chief technician. "Every network has been infiltrated simultaneously. We're dealing with electronic warfare capabilities far beyond anything in our databases. Switch to manual targeting," Draxus ordered. "Emergency protocols. Fight them with conventional weapons." But when the Velkans tried to aim their massive guns manually, they discovered that the human fleet had already moved within the defense perimeter. Ships that should have been detected hours away had somehow penetrated their sensor network without triggering a single alarm. The human assault was methodical and devastating. Each defense platform was targeted by multiple ships using weapons that cut through Velkan armor like it was made of paper. The orbital stations, designed to withstand the firepower of conventional fleets, crumbled under the precisely coordinated human attack. Admiral Reynolds coordinated the fleet action from her command ship. Defense Grid 7 is down. Move to Phase 2. Begin ground operations. The invasion of Zethros Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human dropships, protected by energy shields that deflected Velkan ground fire, descended toward military installations across the planet. Instead of massive bombardments that would level cities, human forces used surgical strikes that neutralized military targets while leaving civilian areas untouched. Colonel Sarah Williams led the assault on the primary military command complex. Her soldiers moved through Velkan defenses with equipment that seemed almost magical compared to what the defenders possessed. Personal shields that stopped enemy fire, weapons that could cut through reinforced armor, communication systems that remained functional despite Velkan jamming attempts. Objective secured, Williams reported as her forces reached the command center. Velkan military leadership is in custody. No civilian casualties reported. Across the planet, similar reports came in from human units. Military bases fell. Weapons factories were captured. Command centers surrendered. The Velkan military, which had dominated this region of space for generations, was systematically dismantled by human forces that seemed to anticipate every defensive measure. Supreme Commander Draxus found himself facing Colonel Williams in his own command center. The human officer was smaller than him, but her equipment and bearing made it clear who held the real power in the room. "You are defeated," Williams told him simply. "Your military forces across the Empire have been neutralized. Your defense networks are under our control. Surrender, and your people will be treated with the dignity that you denied Captain Davis." "This is impossible," Draxus protested. "Our intelligence indicated that humans possessed no significant military capabilities." "Your intelligence was exactly what we wanted it to be," Williams replied. "For 50 years we've allowed the galaxy to see only what we chose to show them. Peaceful traders and diplomats, while our real capabilities remained hidden." "Why?" Draxus demanded. "If you possessed such power, why pretend to be weak?" Williams' expression softened slightly. "Because we hoped we would never need to use it. Captain Davis died trying to protect innocent people. He believed that civilized beings could resolve conflicts without violence. Your leader proved him wrong." Meanwhile, in space above Zethros Prime, the human fleet was demonstrating another aspect of their military doctrine. Velkan civilians who had fled the planet in refugee ships found themselves intercepted not by weapons fire, but by human rescue vessels offering aid and protection. Dr. Lisa Morgan coordinated the humanitarian effort from her medical ship. Velkan families, terrified of human revenge, were surprised to find themselves treated with kindness and provided with food, medical care, and safe passage to neutral worlds. "Why are you helping us?" asked a young Velkan mother, holding her frightened children. "Because you're not responsible for what your leaders did," Morgan explained through a translation device. "War should be fought between soldiers, not visited upon the innocent." The systematic destruction of Velkan military power took less than 72 hours. An empire that had dominated dozens of worlds for centuries was reduced to a collection of defenseless planets guarded by human peacekeeping forces. On Unity Prime, the Galactic Council watched the reports with a mixture of awe and terror. The humans had not simply defeated the Velkans, they had done so with a speed and efficiency that redefined what the Council thought was possible in modern warfare. "Their technology is at least 50 years ahead of anything else in the galaxy," reported the Council's military analysis team. "Their ships, weapons, and tactics suggest a level of preparation that spans decades." Chancellor Vorin struggled to maintain order as species representatives demanded explanations. How had humanity hidden such capabilities? What did this mean for the balance of galactic power? Ambassador Wells addressed the council chamber, her voice carrying an authority that hadn't been there before. "The human delegation wishes to make a statement regarding recent military actions in Velkan space. The floor recognizes Ambassador Wells," Vorin announced, though his voice carried a new tone of respect mixed with wariness. Patricia Wells stood and looked around the chamber at representatives from hundreds of worlds. When she spoke, her words were broadcast across the galaxy, just as Thorax had been days earlier. 3 days ago, Prime Regent Thorak murdered Captain Michael Davis in front of the entire galaxy. This act was not committed in battle or self-defense. It was the execution of a bound prisoner, whose only crime was protecting innocent civilians. She paused, letting her words sink in. Thorak claimed this would demonstrate human weakness. Instead, it has demonstrated something else entirely. For 50 years, humanity has chosen to resolve conflicts through diplomacy and compromise. We did this not because we lacked the power to do otherwise, but because we believed civilized beings could work together peacefully. Captain Davis died believing in those principles, but his murder showed us that some beings in this galaxy interpret restraint as weakness and kindness as an invitation to cruelty. Wells looked directly at the camera, addressing not just the Council but the entire galactic community. The Velkan Empire no longer exists as a military threat. Their forces have been neutralized and their leadership is in custody awaiting trial for war crimes. But this action was not taken for conquest or revenge. It was taken to establish a new reality in galactic politics. Humanity will no longer hide its capabilities. We will no longer pretend to be weak to make others comfortable. From this day forward, the galaxy will know exactly what we are capable of when innocent lives are threatened. She concluded with words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. We preferred to be underestimated rather than feared. But Prime Regent Thorak has made that choice for us. The galaxy wanted to see what humans really are when our restraint is finally exhausted. Now you know. The broadcast ended, but the implications echoed throughout civilized space. Humanity had revealed itself not as the peaceful species the galaxy thought it knew, but as a military power that had been deliberately concealing its strength for half a century. The question now facing every world and every species was simple. What did this mean for their own relationship with the beings they had thought were harmless traders and diplomats? The answer would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. A public killing unleashed humanity's full wrath. 6 months after the fall of the Velkan Empire, the galaxy had settled into what historians would later call the human peace. Where Velkan warships had once patrolled with threats and intimidation, human peacekeeping vessels now maintained order with quiet efficiency. Former Velkan worlds had been placed under temporary administration by a coalition of species, but everyone understood who really held power in this region of space. Jennifer Davis stood at the podium in the Grand Assembly Hall of Unity Prime. The chamber had been reconfigured for this special session, with representatives from every member species present to witness the War Crimes Tribunal. Beside her sat her daughter Emma, now 9 years old, who had insisted on being present for this moment. "My husband, Michael Davis, was a good man," Jennifer began, her voice clear and steady. "He believed that people of different species could work together in peace. He died protecting that belief." In the defendants section, Prime Regent Thorak sat in restraints, his reptilian features showing no emotion. Around him, the surviving members of his military leadership awaited judgment for their roles in what the tribunal had classified as crimes against galactic civilization. "Michael's death wasn't just the murder of one human," Jennifer continued. "It was an attack on the principle that innocent life should be protected regardless of species. It was a rejection of everything this council claims to represent." Judge, Advocate General Patricia Morrison, a human officer who had been assigned to prosecute the case, presented the evidence with methodical precision. Video testimony from survivors of the New Horizon, analysis of the broadcast that had been seen across the galaxy, documentation of other atrocities committed by Velkan forces against civilian populations of various species. The defendant chose to make this a public execution, Morrison stated. He wanted the galaxy to witness what he called a demonstration of strength. Instead, he demonstrated the consequences of mistaking restraint for weakness. The trial had lasted 3 months, but the outcome was never in doubt. Representatives from dozens of species testified about Velkan brutality against their own people. The evidence painted a picture of an empire built on intimidation and maintained through terror. When the verdicts were announced, Thurak and his key lieutenants were sentenced to life imprisonment on a prison world administered by the Galactic Council. It was a just punishment, but everyone in the chamber understood that justice had already been delivered by human military forces. President Harrison addressed the galaxy from Earth shortly after the tribunal concluded. The trials are finished, but the work of building a better galaxy continues. Humanity has revealed its true capabilities not to dominate others, but to ensure that what happened to Captain Davis never happens to anyone else. We offer our technology, our protection, and our cooperation to any species willing to live by the principles of peaceful coexistence. But we also serve notice that those who prey upon the innocent will face the full consequences of their actions. Dr. Lisa Morgan had spent the months since the war documenting the humanitarian relief efforts in former Velkan territory. Her medical teams had provided aid to refugee populations while human engineers helped rebuild damaged infrastructure. It was a demonstration of the same precision that had characterized the military campaign, but focused on healing rather than destruction. The galaxy is learning that human nature has two faces, she explained to a gathering of xenobiologists from across known space. We can be the most gentle and cooperative species in the galaxy. We can also be the most dangerous when that cooperation is betrayed. The choice of which face to see has always belonged to those who interact with us. Commander Jake Thompson had been promoted to Admiral and placed in charge of the new Galactic Security Force, a multinational peacekeeping organization with human leadership but representatives from dozens of species. Their ships patrolled trade routes and responded to conflicts with the authority backed by demonstrated human military superiority. We're not conquerors, Thompson explained to his mixed species officer corps. We're guardians. Our job is to make sure that every being in the galaxy can live without fear of the kind of brutality that killed Captain Davis. The peacekeeping force had already proven its effectiveness. 3 territorial disputes had been resolved through mediation, backed by the implicit threat of human intervention. 2 pirate organizations had surrendered rather than face human military action. A brewing conflict between the Silicon Brotherhood and the Hive Queens had been defused when both sides agreed to human arbitration. Ambassador Wells had been promoted to Secretary General of Human Galactic Relations, a position that made her one of the most powerful diplomats in known space. Her office received visits from species leaders who had once dismissed humanity as insignificant traitors. The dynamic has completely changed, she reported to President Harrison. Species that used to ignore our proposals now implement them immediately. Others that once threatened our interests have become our strongest supporters. Fear? Harrison asked. Respect, Wells corrected. They understand now that we choose cooperation over domination, but they also know we have the power to enforce that choice when necessary. The economic effects of the human revelation, as historians had begun calling it, were equally dramatic. Human technology, no longer hidden behind the facade of simple merchant goods, revolutionized manufacturing and transportation across the galaxy. Medical advances that had been restricted to human colonies were now shared freely with allied species. TI, formerly peaceful human trade missions revealed themselves as sophisticated intelligence and development operations. The friendly merchants who had built relationships across the galaxy for 50 years were actually advanced teams gathering information and establishing the infrastructure for the military operation that had just concluded. We were never just traders, admitted Captain Robert Hayes in his memoir about the events. Every human ship that left Earth carried dual missions: trade and diplomacy on the surface, intelligence gathering and preparation underneath. We spent 50 years learning everything there was to know about galactic military capabilities, political structures, and strategic weaknesses. When the time came to act, we already knew exactly what needed to be done. The revelation that humanity had been conducting the most sophisticated intelligence operation in galactic history while maintaining the appearance of naive newcomers changed how every species viewed their human partners. Trade agreements were reviewed with new understanding. Diplomatic relationships were reassessed in light of demonstrated human capabilities. But perhaps the most significant change was in how conflicts were resolved throughout the galaxy. The phrase "don't make it a human problem" became common diplomatic language. Species that might have resorted to military action to settle disputes now sought mediation, knowing that human intervention would be swift, decisive, and probably not in their favor if they were the aggressor. On the first anniversary of Captain Davis's death, a monument was erected on Unity Prime. The simple stone marker bore his image and a single inscription: "He died believing that civilized beings could work together in peace." His death taught the galaxy the price of proving him wrong. Jennifer Davis spoke at the dedication ceremony, with Emma, now 10 years old, standing beside her. "My husband's sacrifice changed the galaxy," she said, "not because he wanted war, but because he showed that some principles are worth dying for. The galaxy is safer now because everyone understands that humanity will go to any length to protect the innocent. Michael would be proud that his death led not to revenge, but to justice." The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, watched by billions of beings who now lived under the protection of human military might, guided by human moral principles. It was a reminder that the gentle species they had known for 50 years was still there, still committed to peace and cooperation. But it was also a reminder that beneath that gentle exterior lay the most formidable military force the galaxy had ever seen, ready to act when gentleness was met with cruelty. Captain Michael Davis had become a legend throughout galactic civilization, not as a victim, but as the man whose final act of defiance had revealed humanity's true nature to the stars. His choice, to die rather than compromise his principles, had unleashed a force that would protect innocent life throughout the galaxy for generations to come. The public execution that was meant to demonstrate human weakness had instead established humanity as the guarantor of galactic peace. And in that transformation, Captain Davis had achieved a form of immortality that no monument could match. He had shown the galaxy what one human was willing to die for, and humanity had shown the galaxy what they were willing to kill for. The difference between those two things had become the foundation of a new galactic order, built on respect for life, backed by the certain knowledge that those who violated that respect would face consequences beyond their ability to resist. In the end, Thurak had been right about one thing. The galaxy had learned what humans really were. They just hadn't expected the lesson to cost them everything they had built. Through centuries of intimidation and fear, the age of human restraint was over. The age of human responsibility had begun.